population at various areas is infected with hepatitis C because of rampant use of injection drug users. Same way, in other parts of country also it is coming up more in northeast region, and in Haryana, the adjoining districts adjoining Punjab, like Fatehabad, Sirsa, they have high prevalence, and Kathal, they have high prevalence of hepatitis C as compared to other districts like Rohtak and all. So, because of increasing in population of injection drug users, the prevalence for hepatitis C infection is also increasing. Why? Because they use a common needles, they share that injection right. Jail and prisons, because the inmates are staying there, there is more chances of homosexuality and in prison transmission. So there is high prevalence of hepatitis C in prison settings. Now coming to the next part of this slide here. So this is regarding if somebody is living in US and he was born between 1945 and 65, then those populations are at more higher risk of having hepatitis C infections. Similarly, if the illicit drugs are used intranasally, that is cocaine and all, because of the nasal membrane destruction and common use of powders and so many things, there are increased chances of hepatitis C. And of course, the dialysis units these days, which is actually becoming the very common source of infection among the patients who are coming there for dialysis. And hepatitis C is being transmitted through the dialysis units very commonly, almost in more than 30% of cases. This is a source of infection, at least in India. So again, the routes of transmission, you all know transfusion, which is now screened for hepatitis C, IV drug abuse, which there is no screening, hemodialysis units, which actually contains very important part in India, snorting cocaine, as I already told you. Needle stick injuries also carry, but the risk from needle stick injury is due to occupational exposure of contracting a hepatitis C virus is very less, because the amount of blood is very less and it depends on so many factors. Then going for tattooing in the community where they share the same common needle for tattooing is also a risk factor for transmission for hepatitis C. Vertical transmission, that is mother to baby, is less common as compared to hepatitis B through the placenta. So transmission of hepatitis C through the vertical route is less as compared to the hepatitis B infections. Now coming to hepatitis C virus life cycle. So hepatitis C virus is a RNA virus which when enters the body goes to hepatocyte, enters the hepatocyte through lipid receptors, and then it goes to the cytoplasm, and subsequently it uses the host machinery, right, and thereafter it makes the protein. There is a RNA dependent RNA polymerase which is actually present in hepatitis C, and from where it actually transcribes its RNA into a reverse transcription, and RNA is formed, and from where the translation of multiple proteins are formed, and the virus structure is complex in case of hepatitis C. It is also a enveloped virus which actually is formed. The virus keeps on infecting the hepatocytes, and it causes injury by two mechanisms. One thing, it causes direct cellular injury due to viral replication, the hepatocyte gets injured. And the second thing is, while infecting the hepatocyte, it stimulates the interferon genes, and therefore it induces the body's innate immunity. And the immunity of the body comes into play, and which releases cytokines and gathers the inflammatory cells, which are cytotoxic T cells, inflammatory cells, NF kappa beta cells, and therefore there is onset of inflammation within the liver, lobular inflammation, portal inflammation more likely as compared to the lobular inflammation, and that leads on to injury in chronic setting. The clinical presentation, how the illness from hepatitis C typically presents. So one thing is very important to remember, that it is the chronic illness. See, it can present as acute or chronic. However, acute is very uncommon in case of hepatitis C. Mostly it goes on to develop a chronic kind of infection, which is routinely usually asymptomatic and comes and diagnosed only on routine screening of a patient for hepatitis C. right? And sometimes patient may develop directly decompensated cirrhosis in later part of life. And while investigating the etiology of decompensated cirrhosis, one may come to know that he is infected from hepatitis C. So how a HCV infection actually progresses. So if you look at this diagram very carefully, it says that only 20 to 30% are the chances that acute infection of hepatitis C would develop, right? And this will be diagnosed by detection of HCV RNA. And the fulminant hepatitis leading to acute liver failure in case of hepatitis C is virtually a rare thing to happen. As I have almost 8 to 9 years of my experience, but I have not seen any case of acute hepatitis C related acute liver failure, right? So most of the times this will go into a chronic infection. So chronic infection is, that is, hepatitis C gets into the hepatocyte, stimulates the immunity, keeps on the immune cells, starts actually accumulating in the liver, and very slowly and slowly over a period of many years, then this may be a talk of 15 to 30 years I'm talking about, right? So their patient goes on having inflammation within the liver, and the injury will keep on evolving over a period of next 15 to 30 years. And this is largely asymptomatic, that none of the patient would be having any kind of symptoms. So this will be chronic active hepatitis, chronic hepatitis C, which we will call, right? Only there are chances that after 20 years of such a infection, duration of 20 years, 10 to 20% of such cases will go on to develop cirrhosis. So cirrhosis is not going to develop in all 100% of cases which will be having chronic hepatitis C. Over a period of 20 years, 10 to 20% of chronic hepatitis C patients would be developing cirrhosis of liver, and out of these, decompensation would happen on year-like basis, which will have ultimately 5-year survival rate of 50%. And out of all these cirrhotics which will be developing after 20 years, hepatocellular carcinoma would be developing at a rate of 1 to 4% per year, right? So hepatitis C is not an acute problem; it is a chronic problem, because once you are infected, it is largely asymptomatic, right? So it is very important to understand that patient will not be knowing that he is infected with hepatitis C. His all the tests may be normal except for anti-HCV, which may be positive. Only if the person is screened for hepatitis C, it will be coming to know that, you will come to know that he is FC positive, and after 20 years, there are risks that he will go on to develop cirrhosis. And once cirrhosis develops, then there are very good likely chances that decompensation in the form of development of ascites, upper GI bleed, hepatic encephalopathy, and so on, and jaundice, and so on will be developing in this particular case. And other than this, hepatitis C again is a virus which actually causes hepatocellular carcinoma. Because of development of cirrhosis, 1 to 4% of patients per year of cirrhosis of liver will go on to develop hepatocellular carcinoma. So this is how the things would happen. First, a normal liver infected with hepatitis C, a chronic hepatitis, largely asymptomatic, over next 25 years cirrhosis, and then the problems of end-stage liver disease, death, and hepatocellular carcinoma would be the end result of it. So how would be what would be the serological markers once you're infected with hepatitis C? So as it's shown here, that HCV antibodies after the infection would develop after 1.5 to 2 months and will keep on rising. However, you must understand that these antibodies are not giving any immunity to the person who is infected. They are only markers of infection, right? This is very, very important. This is not a marker of immunity. This is only a marker of infection. Now, some people will have symptoms, whereas others will not have. The HCV RNA will start developing in the blood after 15 days of the infection, and it will be staying there only. So this is one thing which is very, very stable. Only in patients who actually develop acute hepatitis like of illness, the ALT will be rising. Otherwise, largely the ALT will be staying at normal only, or very mildly elevated. You can say 1 to 2 times upper limit of normal, and so the illness will go most of the time undetectable in a chronic form. So how will you diagnose HCV infection? Somebody has come to you. So there are two ways people will come to you. Either there is a pregnant female who is coming in a antenatal clinic, and where the guidelines nowadays are to screen that patient for hepatitis B and C screening. The second person is coming with the elevated liver enzymes, where you are actually investigating the cause of liver disease, and there you order the viral markers. There you come to know of anti-HCV antibodies. The third is a very asymptomatic person. I really do not know how many normal population should be screened or will be screened for hepatitis C antibodies as such. There is no guideline which actually suggests that you should screen a normal person without any deranged LFT, deranged liver functions, or any cause of cirrhosis or any liver disease for hepatitis C infection. So there are no guidelines. You cannot suggest that. It is not cost effective to screen the whole population of 130 crores in India for screening hepatitis C antibody, right? So only in special settings or people coming to hospital for other diseases like liver disease or pregnant female per se will be screened for hepatitis C with anti-HCV antibodies. If it is positive, right? If it is negative, you are done. There is no current HCV infection. You just stop the things, right? But if the antibodies are positive, then you will reflexively check the RNA levels, right? RNA by PCR testing. If the RNA is detectable, you declare this patient is having currently HCV infection, right? And that patient will be linked to the treatment for care. Suppose this HCV RNA is undetectable, then you consider that this patient has no current HCV infection. However, as anti-HCV antibodies are positive, it is considered that this patient must have had any previous attack of hepatitis C which has self-resolved. The hepatitis C infection, as I had told you, may be developing acute illness in 15 to 20% of cases, which may be clinically or unclinically, which may be clinically manifesting or asymptomatic. And in those patients, most of the times, the patient will be clearing a hepatitis C virus automatically by natural immunity, right? So that patient who is having a patient who is having anti-HCV antibody positive with no detectable HCV RNA is considered to be having cured of HCV infection naturally, and he is declared that at present he is not having any current HCV infection. However, one thing to be very sure for you, that a person who is having anti-HCV antibody positive with no detectable HCV RNA at present, we declare that there is no current HCV infection, but these anti-HCV antibodies will not provide any lifelong immunity to the person. Again, if he again contracts the virus, then there are chances that he may again develop the illness. So one thing is very, very clear. Presence of anti-HCV antibody is only a marker of infection, may be present or past, to be decided by RNA levels. If RNA levels are present, it is a current HCV infection, may be acquired in past. If there are no HCV RNA levels, it is negative, then the patient is having no current HCV infection. Maybe in past he was infected but self-cured. However, this does not imply to lifelong immunity from further HCV infections. So a person with HCV antibody positivity and negative HCV RNA may contract the disease again if hit with the virus again. I hope you could understand what I want to convey to you. Now, coming to HCV genome, this is a complex genome. This is a polypeptide, and this is 3 dash amino terminal end. This is 5 dash amino terminal end. Now, there are many proteins which are actually present on HCV genome, genes for many proteins. So this is the core protein. These are the 2 envelope glycoproteins, and these are the 5 non-structural proteins. So these non-structural proteins of hepatitis C virus are responsible for formation of viral structure, as well as basically they are responsible for the replication of the virus process, right? So this is a nucleocapsid, which is the envelope protein, and these are the non-structural proteins. The NS2 is a NS3 is a protease or RNA helicase, which will open up the RNA spiral chain. And proteases, they will be cleaving the various proteins, and NS3 will cleave the this polypeptide chain here and here, and NS4A and 4B are acting like cofactors, and this NS5B is the RNA dependent RNA polymerase, which is the key enzyme and key gene in case of hepatitis C, like DNA polymerase of hepatitis B. So here this is RNA dependent RNA polymerase, which is actually required for viral replication, and RNA helicase and proteases would help in the replication process of the virus, which is very, very important. So why I'm going into this much of detail? Because now I will be going to the therapy of the hepatitis C virus, which is very, very important for you to know. As nowadays, hepatitis C is almost completely curable disease which has come up, and these are the new developments of developing directly acting antivirals in case of hepatitis C. I hope you people must have gone through these drugs in your pharmacology days, and because the drugs have come up in our guidelines since 2014, and I expect that at least your batch must have read it in your new pharmacology books. These are the new direct acting antiviral drugs which have actually changed the scope of treatment of, in case of hepatitis C. So here you can see that we have multiple types of antiviral drugs in case of hepatitis C. The NS3 protein, which actually can be inhibited by protease inhibitors, can be inhibited by talaprevir, simiprevir, and the newer drugs of gazaprevir, Asunoprazole and Paritaprevir. I've listed many drugs, but you don't need to remember all of them, right? At present, we are using Grazoprevir, which is the best one out of all these. Talaprevir and Simiprevir were tested initially, and they had given good results. However, nowadays we have forgotten their regimes. Asunoprazole and Paritaprevir are also less commonly used. It is now among all the guidelines, it is Grazoprevir among the protease inhibitors which is now chosen. Coming to NS5A inhibitors, the NS5A is a very important enzyme along with NS5B. The NS5B is the key one, right? The NS5A is very, very important, and these are daclatasvir, asvirs, whatever drugs end with asvir, ASVIR, asvirs. Okay, and whatever drugs end with Previr. So these are actually the keywords have been given. All protease inhibitors will be ending with Pravir, right? NS5A inhibitors will be ending with Asvir. So Daclatasvir, Ledipasvir, Ombitasvir, and Elbasvir. This is Elbasvir, right? So Asvirs are NS5A inhibitors. These are very important actually line of therapy. Coming to NS5B inhibitors, so nucleotide polymerase inhibitor. This is sofosbuvir. The name is missing here, which is a key drug in case of hepatitis C regimes. That is sofosbuvir. And the next one is non-nucleoside polymerase inhibitor, dasabuvir. This is a drug, but actually at very less of the regime use the dasabuvir. It is sofosbuvir, which is the main drug. Then coming to daclatasvir, ledipasvir, and albasvir, and then coming to grazoprevir. These are the main drugs. The interferon and ribavirin were actually came. The interferon and ribavirin came into picture in late 90s and early 2000s, when the treatment of hepatitis C was possible only with interferon and ribavirin regimen, which was 24 weeks or 48 weeks treatment or 72 weeks treatment, and this was an injectable treatment. I'm not going into detail of that because this is a past now. And I would like to tell you that we had good results of treating almost 60 to 70% of hepatitis C patients were treatable with this regime, except who are cirrhotics. However, coming with coming of the oral drugs, these are all oral, sorry. So these are our oral drugs, right? And this is injectable treatment. As I told you in hepatitis B also, the interferons are injectable. You need to administer these every 7 days or daily, right? So even after injecting every 7 days, you have a prodromal-like symptoms like fever, arthralgia, rash, and headache-like illness, myalgias, and so on. Because of all these things, actually, patients were not comfortable getting interferon injections, right? So this treatment, even when it was present, only 60 to 70% of all hepatitis C patients would actually be ready for getting interferon injections, because injections were not free of side effects, right? And plus they have to visit hospital every seventh day, right? However, in case of directly acting antivirals, these are oral drugs and which are very, very effective, and they can be administered at home also, can at home, and they have a very finite duration of treatment, that is 8 weeks or 12 weeks of treatment in most of the cases. Plus, second thing, the benefit is there are no side effects, very less of these side effects. Only some drug interactions which you have to take care of with anti-tubercular and anti-epileptic drugs. So these are very, very safe drugs with very good efficacy of treating patients up to a tune of 90 to 95%, maybe more than 95% in certain scenarios. So coming to HCV treatment groups. So first of all, you have to look at HCV antibodies to document infection. Then subsequently for current infection, you have to look at RNA-PCR antibody, RNA-PCR levels, quantitative levels. If RNA-PCR is positive only, then the patient is candidate for treatment. Now, you have to divide the patient in genotypes from one which genotype you are actually looking at. 1 to 6, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 genotypes of hepatitis C. Now there are regimes which are pan-genotypic, and even if you do not determine genotype, irrespective of genotype, the regime will be acting in all the regime will be effective in all the genotypes, right? But still, you must know that hepatitis C has 6 genotypes, and for certain drugs, you need to have genotype estimation. However, some drugs are pan-genotypic, which can act in all the genotypes. Now, for treatment groups for hepatitis C, you must be able to group your patients into certain categories. First one is which patient is treatment naive. Naive means first time getting, which are the patients who are going to be having treatment for hepatitis C for the first time. Those are treatment naive, TN. Then treatment experience, a person who has already experienced a treatment or has already received the treatment. Maybe he has received interferon in past and now he has again developed the hepatitis C infection, or it was a treatment failure where he received the treatment but RNA did not become negative, or patient received treatment way back and he was treated but again he has got infected. So in hepatitis C, once treated doesn't mean that he will be lifelong immune, as I already told you. So no antibody actually provides a lifelong immunity. It is something like a episode of any kind of short-term infection, which treated with antibiotics would be treated for that period only. And if you again get infected, then you have to take treatment again, right? So treatment experience you have to look at, right? Coming to now, you have to divide your patients into whether patient is having cirrhosis or there is no cirrhosis. This is most important because a cirrhotic patient may be having different regime, right? So all these things would be deciding factors whether he is getting a treatment naive or he is a treatment experienced. Experienced patient may be having viral resistance to certain genes which we need to estimate. Subsequently, we need to decide whether a patient is a non-cirrhotic or he is a cirrhotic patient. And further, even if he is cirrhotic, we have to see whether he is a compensated cirrhotic. This I will tell you in my next lectures, what is compensated cirrhotic and what is decompensated. But roughly, you can understand this thing by the decompensated cirrhotic means once a cirrhosis patients have developed significant portal hypertension to lead on to complications like upper GI bleed, ascites, jaundice, hepatic encephalopathy, and so on. A patient who is cirrhotic and has not developed significant portal hypertension and has not undergone all these complications is known as compensated cirrhotic. So our treatment options would be dependent upon the whole profile. A patient is having genotype 2 or 3, treatment naive or treatment experienced, whether he is non-cirrhotic or cirrhotic, and if he is cirrhotic, whether he is compensated or decompensated. However, I'm not going to tell you treatment regimes for all, right? So treatment eligible patients who are eligible, any patient adult who is hepatitis C infected and is not having cirrhosis and who has not previously received hepatitis C treatment is eligible to receive a simplified regime, which I'm going to tell you. Other regimes I'm not taking in my lecture because they are not of your concerns. The complicated cases, which I will not take, right? Because hepatitis C treatment is very complex, right? So I would be talking only of simple cases who are not cirrhotic, who have not received any treatment before, who are treatment naive. So who is not eligible for this simplified treatment is any patient who has received the treatment before, cirrhotics, patients with end-stage renal disease, patients of chronic kidney disease, where GFR is less than 30 milliliter per minute of body surface area, any patient who is co-infected with hepatitis B or HIV infection, any case who is having hepatocellular carcinoma, right? And any case who is having prior history of liver transplantation, right? So these are all complex cases. I'm not going to discuss with you. So only simple cases should be treated by you at your MBBS level, which which should be ready when you move on to the periphery, and which should be knowing to you that all patients who are treatment naive, non-cirrhotic, and should be treated with for hepatitis C with a simplified regime. Now, what else should be done for pre-treatment assessment? You must assess the patient's cirrhosis level. So, transient elastography is a fibroscan, which is the latest investigation to look for liver fibrosis non-invasively. So we cannot go for doing liver biopsy in all the patients. It is an invasive procedure associated with risks, maybe death in less than 1% of cases. So we do not advise liver biopsy in all cases of hepatitis C to look for liver fibrosis. Now we have many other markers which can actually look at assessment of liver fibrosis non-invasively. What are those? There are certain serum markers and one investigation which is fibroscan, transient elastography. Transient elastography is like ultrasound. You send the ultrasonic waves into the liver, and there the velocity of the waves passing through the liver determines its stiffness, and those values are actually reflected on the screen by the computer, which is incorporated into the machine, and they give you the readings in kilopascals, and if the value is more than 12.5 kilopascals, you assume that this is significant fibrosis, may be qualifying to have cirrhosis of liver. Other non-invasive serological markers which can be used in case of chronic hepatitis C for assessment of cirrhosis are various scores, and I cannot tell you all those scores, but you can think that those scores actually incorporate certain investigations into them, which are very, very simple, like platelet count, AST levels, ALT levels, SGOT, SGPT, platelets, and your BMI and age, and so on. And with these simple markers, the scores are actually calculated. The calculators are available online, and one can do it very simply in OPD, on an OPD basis, and you can very well get only with simple investigations which are available everywhere, that whether a patient is cirrhotic or non-cirrhotic. Then further, the ultrasound abdomen can be used. However, some very early patients of cirrhosis may be missed by ultrasound abdomen, where transient elastography and non-invasive markers of liver fibrosis in the form of serological markers are very, very helpful, right? So those are the things with which you assess the liver cirrhosis. Now, coming to, as I've already told you, drug-drug interaction, if somebody is getting anti-tubercular treatment or anti-epileptic drugs, these are the patients who should not be offered hepatitis C treatment before looking at closely at drug-drug interaction and the urgency of treating patient for hepatitis C, right? Amedron is another drug, which is a cardiac drug used for ventricular arrhythmias, and those patients who are on Amedron are not advisable to take sofosbuvir, which has a strong drug interaction with sofosbuvir, right? So there are certain drug-drug interactions which has to be kept in mind. However, these drug-drug interactions are very, very rare, and they are only with selective drugs like anti-tubercular drugs, anti-epileptics, and Amedron, which are very, very significant. In rest, most of the cases, actually, you can give the hepatitis C drug therapy very safely, right? Coming to this, the pre-treatment laboratory testing which should be done is complete blood count, and you should assess the patient's anemia levels. HB should not be very low. If patient is having anemia, it should be treated first. AST and ALT, as I already told you, a liver function test should be assessed, and eGFR. Because if eGFR is less than 30, then it is a special population where special drug treatments would be there, special regimes would be there. It is not a simplified treatment which you can be offered to these patients, right? So whenever you are starting antiviral therapy for hepatitis C, you must test every patient for hepatitis B virus as well as for HIV infections. And before initiating antiviral therapy, it is mandatory that all young females should be screened for pregnancy. They should not be pregnant because till date there is no study to document safety of hepatitis C drugs in pregnant females. And one thing is very sure, as I told you, that you should never be in a hurry to treat hepatitis C virus infection unless it is a decompensated cirrhosis. Right? As I told you, the natural history of hepatitis C, you must be aware that it is a disease of years and decades, right? It is not a year of a disease of days or weeks, right? So it is not even a disease of years, it is a disease of decades, right? Only after 20 years, 15 to 20% of patients are going to develop cirrhosis of liver, right? So you should not be in tension, you should not be in hurry. In a reproductive age group of a young female, if she is planning pregnancy or if she is pregnant, there is no hurry to treat hepatitis C. Just leave it, right? And let the patient complete her pregnancy and lactation, and then after that, patient can be taken up for hepatitis C treatment, right? In case she is a reproductive age group and she has not planned pregnancy, then it is always advisable to treat hepatitis C before she plans pregnancy, right? However, if pregnancy has already happened, then there is no need to go for termination of pregnancy. It is not an indication of medical termination of pregnancy. Plus, one can complete the pregnancy and lactation part also, and only after that one can take the hepatitis C treatment. Another thing, the vertical transmission of hepatitis C virus to the newborn is very, very less. And even if it happens, which is very less chances, 1 to 5% chances that vertically it will be transmitted to the newborn, it is not none of the concern. The mother should continue with lactation because the benefits of lactation are much higher as compared to the risk of hepatitis C infection in the newborn, because ultimately you will be able to treat it after few years, right? Now, coming to the treatment regime, what I'm talking about is only of pan genotypic. What do you mean by pan? The word pan stands means that this regime is applicable to all the genotypes. The ideal regime which should be given is gliclapivir 300 milligram plus pibrentasvir 120 milligram should be taken with food for a duration of 8 weeks. This is for treatment naive cases who are non-cirrhotic, right? For 8 weeks, this regime is given. You know, don't need to determine genotype of the patient. If your patient is treatment naive and non-cirrhotic and you have available gliclapivir and pibrentasvir, right? This drug is not available in India. Understood? So this regime is not available in India. This is available in US, in Western countries, in Europe. However, the drug has not come to India. The next regime is, which is pan-genotypic, is sofosbuvir and velpatasvir. So sofosbuvir 400 milligram plus velpatasvir 100 milligram for a duration of 12 weeks is enough to treat all genotypes, right, who are treatment naive and non-cirrhotic. This is available in India, right? So in India, we can use the sofosbuvir and velpatasvir. The rest of the drug regimes I'm not talking about, because now American Association for Society of Liver Disease recommends only these two regimes as first line treatment. Rest, all others are alternative regimes. They are not the first line regimes because the efficacy of these two regimes is more than 95% in the treatment group of 95 to 99% in treatment naive non-cirrhotic patients, right? The second one, sofosbuvir and velpatasvir is available in India, whereas gliclapivir and pibrentasvir, they are unavailable in India, and they are likely to reach India in next 1 year. Now, coming to post-treatment assessment, you have given the antiviral drugs. There is no need to actually follow these patients. You can give the therapy for 12 weeks itself and send the patient home. In the present COVID-19 era, we do not, normally we used to recommend patient to come monthly to take the therapy and plus to have a watch on the patient for any kind of, symptom or side effect which he may be having. But in the present COVID-19 era, it is not recommended that you should follow these patients on monthly basis because there may be a risk of nosocomial transmission if these patients frequently visit the hospital settings. Right? We all know that COVID may be absent in your society, in in your local settings, maybe at your home or local locality. But if you reach any hospital setting, then there is a high risk for nosocomial transmission of these infections. So it is not advisable. So now post-treatment assessment means that after 8 weeks or 12 weeks, whatever regime has been taken up by you, the patient would be assessed. So how it would be assessed? So HCV RNA was done at baseline, it was positive, and that's why you were treated. Now at the end of therapy, you will be again tested for HCV RNA, right? That is known as end of the treatment response. So, end of the treatment response is today I have finished my antiviral drugs. Tomorrow I can go for end of treatment response. But suppose I go for it after 12 weeks, right? That is known as sustained virological response. What it means that even after stopping the drug for 3 months, the virus was unable to come up in the blood. And that is how you assess the viral illnesses in case of hepatitis B and C, right? B I did not talk about, C I'm talking about, because B has an infinite duration of therapy and C has a finite duration of therapy. Infinite means where you do not know the duration. Finite means this is a determined duration, 12 weeks or 8 weeks. At the end of 12 weeks, you have ended the therapy and still you wait for further 3 months as the therapy is cost. Therapy is very effective. It is effective in 95 to 99% of cases. So we do not go for end of treatment response these days. We directly wait for further 3 months of the therapy and then test the RNA levels after 3 months of completion of therapy. And if the RNA has not come up in the blood, we declare that patient is having sustained virological response, that is SVR. So if SVR is present, and their transaminase, that is ALT levels, have come down to normal, we declare the hepatitis C has been treated. However, if SVR is present and ALT levels are still elevated, then what do you interpret? We interpret that hepatitis C virus infection has been treated. However, liver should be assessed for further etiologies other than hepatitis C in case the ALT levels have not settled. Understood? So this is a new slide which I have come up with post-exposure approach and how to evaluate. So many of you will be becoming, coming to internship. Today only one of my doctor intern in our hospital approached me for this thing that he has accidentally received exposure to hepatitis C because of needle prick from a hepatitis C positive, right? So these things may happen with any one of you. So how to assess? So this is a very beautiful chart which you can see here. The exposure has happened. How will you respond now as a clinician? So you will test the hepatitis C antibodies at baseline within next 48 hours. If the hepatitis C antibody is negative, that declares that this person was not infected with hepatitis C beforehand, right? And actually there is no need to go for RNA in all the cases. We do not know, right? If hepatitis C antibodies are positive, that means you were previously infected with hepatitis C virus, and then RNA levels can be done, right? Because of this trick, your hepatitis C antibodies are going to develop only after 1.5 months, which I told you very initially in my serological markers. Because of the present trick, the HCV antibodies are going to be positive only after 1.5 months. The earliest marker which can get is HCV RNA levels, which can come up in your blood and may be detectable at 15 days. Not before 15 days, even HCV RNA levels can be detectable. One thing is very, very utmost essential to understand here. There is no vaccine for hepatitis C, plus there are no immunoprophylaxis in the form of immunoglobulins which can receive after post-exposure, after the exposure of hepatitis C needle prick, right? So you cannot have any kind of immunoglobulins administered. There is no treatment with any vaccination kind of thing. You only have to watch whether you have developed the hepatitis C infection or not. There are at baseline within 48 hours, you will go on to test your hepatitis C antibodies. If it is positive, that means you were previously infected, unknowingly infected from hepatitis C infection in the past itself. From the current infection, from the current prick, you will be hepatitis C antibody positive only after 1.5 months, right? Automatically, and your immunity will itself eradicate the hepatitis C virus infection. In case you develop hepatitis C positivity after 2 months or 4 months, then you will become a candidate for getting antiviral drugs. So there is no hurry to look for it, and you should not be much worried about it, because now there is more than 95 to 99% success rate efficacy of antivirals. Right? This is a free program to be administered to all the patients of hepatitis B and C at district levels, right? So B and C would be tested for DNA, cRNA, HBe antigen, anti-HBe antibodies at government facilities allotted, nationally at each, and the centers have been identified in each state for those investigations, and the samples would be, and the spokes of the treatment lie at the district hospital. So in each and every district of one doctor would be available who will be looking after the patients for BNC and would be administering them treatment, which will be free of cost. All the investigations would also be free of cost, and the vaccination of hepatitis B would be available for all adults whosoever wants to get vaccinated. So the aim of this program is to eradicate hepatitis B and C in Lahore. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And by this, I complete my lectures on or viral hepatitis